At some point, I decided the video game was not serving me anymore. And so I started focusing on school and academics, jobs and career prep, trying to do some volunteering. I hated this game, but I played it because I thought I had to. I joined the fitness and health game. How can I sustain an approach that will optimize my longevity and serve me to be athletic and aesthetic for the rest of my life? As you keep playing these games, you develop your own philosophy, your own take, your own long-term vision. These are the very things that are self-sustaining and self-motivating. Once you develop into these areas, into these games, and they become part of your lifestyle, and you play them and you just enjoy developing them, then they're effortless. You develop it as part of your lifestyle. Sooner or later, the area just becomes naturally progressing. It's like an EXP farm. You can just AFK in it, and then the XP just flows into your character. Once you develop those systems, 95% of people grow up to live lives that they don't even want to live, doing things they don't even want to do, in order to keep living a life that they don't really want to live. You know, sitting inside just a sad little office cubicle. By then, 5 decades have been passed, sitting in this small dimension, in this vast world, going to work every day, just to sit in a cubicle, never really exploring what the rest of the world has to offer. Because all life seems to be is tasks, pages, documents. All of transportation just consists of driving to work and driving home. And an environment that's really just filled with claustrophobic and anxiety perpetuating environment. So 40 years of doing this kind of work. Their bodies are unathletic, unesthetic. They're rotting away in fat and disease. Their minds are sapped of energy, deadened from curiosity and wonder, trapped in this cycle of self-limitation and resentment. Their relationships are there, but they're not truly fulfilling. They're never truly present with the people around them because they're too busy planning for some magical day in the far, far future. Now, the whole way through this torture, a feeling of confinement and of being trapped secretly tugs away in the back of their minds. Now that small feeling has a big message for them, but they've been drowning it out ever since they entered university to please their parents. 20 years later, they're still stuck in a 9-to-5 job, trying to justify to themselves they're doing something productive, accompanied by this illusion of security. And we know how fragile security is with, everyone being laid off. Is it really security? And of course, there's the security of the 3-way traffic lineup every day. They drive to work, waiting. Lunch comes, they sit in the fast food drive-thru, waiting. They wait to go home. And when getting home comes, they drive to work, except now in the opposite direction, sitting in traffic, waiting. When the TV and the pizza comes, they're already waiting to use up their vacation days. And each year that goes by, this is just on repeat. A person becomes weaker and weaker, more and more resentful as they give up themselves. And honestly, sad. The word sad doesn't quite do this experience justice because it's beyond that. And yet, this is the actual reality for the average person in our modern day culture. This is the dream that we've been sold. What a sad little dream. I like to joke that if a young person from the third world knew about what it was really like to be an average person living in the first world, he'd probably stay content in being a third world citizen. And so our mass culture does a tremendously good job at justifying this kind of misery as the norm. And all too many people are convinced. The crab mentality, right? Crabs in a bucket. When one crab tries to escape, the others pull it back in. Because the truth of the matter is that most people refuse to live the life that they want to live, justified by this addiction to self-victimization. And if you don't fall victim to the resentment and self-pity that's all too common nowadays, you realize that you've always had a choice of whether or not you want to live the life you want to live. And secondly, whether or not you're going to start standing up for it. If you can realize that you already have the ability to start living the life you want to live, you're already ahead of 80% of people. So if you think about your life path, right? There's this traditional life path, let's just say childhood, 0 to 5 years, and then you go to preschool, kindergarten, elementary, middle school, high school, that's 13 years. By that time, you're 18. And then nowadays, right, you need to go for more school. That's another 4 to 8 years. And then after that, you work a job for 40 years until you're 65. So growing up, you're told you need to follow this traditional life path because that's what worked, for like the boomers. But the world has changed completely, and it's only going to change faster and faster. It's like ordering a pizza, and when you open the box, 3 slices are missing, and somebody's taking a big ass bite out of the 4th slice. That's basically what it feels like to be robbed of practically half of your life, just giving it all away to a soulless job. And the funny thing is that if you received a pizza like that, you demand a refund for such an outrageous atrocity. But since it's your life, and since it's extended over such a long period of time, you've been tricked into thinking that's just how it is, until one day you finally have enough. And that's when you begin on this kind of unconventional life path that you have to create yourself. And I think that's the scariest part, having to create something yourself, because there's no one there to guide you, because you realize that nobody actually knows. That's when you have to stop at the next fork in the road and set forth on a different path. And the scary thing is that from now on, every fork you stop at is another path you have to decide to take. And the path of uncertainty is scary, but you can say for once in your life that you're actually doing what you've chosen to do and not what you've been told to do. The person following this unconventional path, they learn to carve out their own way by following their intuition into a life of freedom and joy that's defined on their own terms, not somebody else's. And they know that the only way to freedom is to discover what it means to live authentically. And they understand that every conventional formula is an illusion and trap set forth by the culture. And so your freedom is made manifest by your ability to be intentional with how you choose to live. This means designing every area of your life to serve you to a point where it seems like no matter what kind of experience happens, you know it only serves you in greater health, wealth, freedom, and joy. Because you're the one that gets to decide how you want to respond to situations in your life. Do you want to keep dwelling in this misery of feeling like you can't control anything? Or are you going to take a stand and choose, what would the ideal version of me do? The version of me that's free, the version of me that's happy, the version of me that's fulfilled. How would that person choose to live and choose to respond to situations, be them good or bad, right? Because every bad situation, all it takes is a reframing of the mind to realize how much of a blessing it was. And the first step to a life of realizing your own authentic freedom is to understand this basic idea that life is a set of games, and you can pick the game. Every discipline is a game you can choose to master. And notice I said choose to, not have to, right? The thing is that you don't have to play every discipline. So don't waste energy on games that you don't want to play in the first place. That's the good news. You get to choose what games you want to play. If you don't like the 9-to-5 rat race game, good, don't play it, right? If you like it, good, play it. But play it so impeccably and so well because you've seen through it as a game and you're not caught up in it. You don't stake your whole existence on it. And only from that place of lightheartedness, of humor, can you play it really well. It's like when you go to make a presentation or a speech, right? For work or for class, whatever. When you're caught up in your mind and you're all like tightened up in this anxiety of like, oh no, what if this happens? What if that happens? Oh, what if I don't do this well? Then you give a shitty speech. But when you're loose, when you're free, when you're free flowing with the energy and not caught up in it, that's when you just start and flow and you start to speak and you start to give the best kind of presentation and you go off script. Right? The best speakers don't need a script because they just flow from their hearts. And so when you start to pick the games that you're playing in every aspect of your life, you begin to find intrinsic motivation in yourself effortlessly, because getting good at whatever games you choose is fun because you've consciously decided that I'm going to play this game, right? And so if we think about it from a video game analogy, your items, your armor, your character, your skills, they're constantly upgrading because you're playing a game, right? And when you play a game, you constantly want to be making progress. And as you make progress, you can share your experience, your EXP, and you can also drop items to players, to other people who are, on a similar path, on the same path as you, except maybe they're a little bit lower level, 1, 2, 3 steps behind you. And all of this you're doing from a place of passion rather than obligation. And then once you get good at a game, you can move on to the next level and keep moving on to the next level, or you could choose to leave the game altogether for a better one, right? Sometimes we realize we've been caught up in a game for so long and there's a better game, and so we transcend that game to move on to a better one. Now in my own life, right, some of the games I played with, as a kid, one of the big things was Lego. I was obsessed with just this imagination that Lego would bring out in me, and then I would try to build the coolest project, and I would just obsess over it and like daydream about the kind of thing that I could put together. And then I moved on to video games at some point, and I had phases where I was absolutely obsessed with one specific game for months at a time, whether that was, FPS shooters or MOBAs or open world. Like I played anything from I was obsessed with things like Minecraft to like CSGO to League. All of these things, I had phases where I was very distinctly obsessed with one game. It was PUBG, Apex, like all these, right? And then at some point, I decided the video game was not serving me anymore. And so I started focusing on school and academics, right? I had this obsession, which I realized in hindsight was driven completely out of fear, with achieving some substantial number on my transcript, because I thought getting good grades would lead me to a good job, and getting a good job would lead me to some kind of fulfilling happiness. And so I also focused on, jobs and career prep, resumes, cover letters, trying to do some volunteering. I hated this game, but I played it because I thought I had to. In between these games, somewhere along that, I also started taking care of my fitness and health. I joined the fitness and health game, right? So I became obsessed with getting my body into shape and watching my lift numbers increase. And as my own journey developed, I realized I don't actually care about the lift numbers so much anymore, but it's about developing my body in a way that's athletic and aesthetic, and in a way that optimizes my aging and my long-term function, because I want to be athletic till I die. And so rather than see them as short-term hitting numbers now, I see it as a long-term game of something that I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. And it's like, how can I sustain an approach to fitness and health that will optimize my longevity and serve me to be athletic and aesthetic for the rest of my life? And so as you keep playing these games, you develop your own philosophy, your own take, your own long-term vision for how you want to see yourself progress in these. And then these are the very things that are self-sustaining, and they're self-motivating. Because once you develop into these areas, into these games, and they become part of your lifestyle, and you play them and you just enjoy developing them, then they're effortless, right? And so I also had a personal growth, productivity / psychology phase where I was really obsessed with collecting all of these psychological tricks, habits, theories, philosophies. And I was obsessed with this, trying to find ways to maximize productivity. And a lot of times it was through tricks and theories. But, with this game, I also realized that it's about developing a long-term vision that guides you. And so everything you do related to your mental productivity is in alignment with that long-term vision. You develop it as part of your lifestyle, just like fitness and health. And sooner or later, the area just becomes naturally progressing. And it's like a EXP farm. You can just AFK in it, and then the XP just flows into your character, right? Once you develop those systems. And so now I'm on this phase of, solopreneurship, where I'm trying to build a personal brand because I know I have a deeper message that I want to share with people. And yet the thing I'm trying to share are things that people already know deep down, but I want to articulate in a way that it finally clicks for people, right? Because all of these things are just a result of my own personal development. And through my own personal development, I realize I can share it with the world and maybe help some youngins gain control of their lives. And in hindsight, right, I realized a lot of the games I played, especially in my earlier years, were pretty stupid. But it's like I don't regret playing any of them because they're the necessary precursor to move me onto my next stage of realization. And one realization that was huge for me was becoming totally disillusioned with the whole post-secondary system and the whole job system, the whole way we've set up our culture, because it's so backwards, right? For example, in school, it's like one of the limiting beliefs I've always had about creating content and sharing it is that it's just resistance against it, right? But then an epiphany I had was like, if I can write boatloads of absolute garbage for school on a topic that I don't even give a shit about, then how on earth can it possibly be hard to write about something that I actually love talking about? And think about it this way, right? If you can work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for somebody else doing something you don't give a fuck about, you can work 2 hours a day for yourself, man. It's just this sense of lack of self-confidence and lack of conviction we have in ourselves that we think we have to settle for something less. And so if you just spent 20% of your productivity doing some bullshit and transferred it over to working on something that you love thinking about, you love obsessing over, that's always in your mind, that's your craft, right? If you spend 20% of your productivity energy on that, as you did on some bullshit assignment from school or some shit at work, then just how much progress could you be making? And just how much more could you be enjoying yourself and your own life, right? But we always push it away because we think we have to justify to ourselves, what I care about isn't important. It's not realistic. It can't make money. It's not worth the time because, we need to make a living, right? But then going back to it, it's like, but applying zero critical thinking to write a paper about what some professor wants to hear, that's productive? That's worth the time, right? Just so you can get some number on a transcript that justifies your existence and your self-worth? And working a bullshit 9 to 5 for 40 goddamn years is worth your time? Right? It's all of this self-limiting beliefs that we have. Because the majority of people refuse to see that they have a choice. And they'll always find an excuse to continue justifying, the lack in their lives. Everyone around me is doing it. I have to keep playing this game, even though I hate it. Because it's the only way to make a living. And then that exact same person who tries to keep on playing this miserable game is the one guy at the annual Christmas party at work, who when he gets too drunk makes sure to let everyone know, right? And then you wonder why everyone's secretly depressed, because they're just repressing all of it. And then when they finally have the opportunity, or when it finally gets to be too much, they blow out. Right? You think about every significant person in history. They created reality on their own terms. Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Henry Ford. Right? You think about Jesus Christ. When the masses didn't like him, guess what? He was crucified, right? So there's going to be a lot of, it goes back to the crabs in the bucket thing. When you start standing up for yourself, people are going to want to pull you back into their own cycle of misery. And so the question arises, right? How do we truly start getting down to work in terms of carving our own path? And I would say the first big thing is you want to understand how the different areas in your life are either giving you joy or creating pain for you. And you do this by developing an awareness in every part of your life, right? You have to become conscious of these things in your life. And really, this is the underlying power of meditation, because this is what it teaches you. But it's like meditation has become so hyped these days that it's like almost like, to me, I think it's almost like kind of cliche. It's like, oh, you practice meditation, right? But forget the cliche part of it. The point of meditation is that it transfers over to every part of your life, because the more conscious you get in observing your patterns and observing the thoughts, the beliefs that you hold that don't serve you, right? You can't change them unless you first become aware of them. And so the first premise of this, right, is that areas in your life, they're either giving you joy or they're creating pain. And premise number 2 is that areas that are left unexamined are typically full of pains. And if you're able to begin seeing every discipline in life as a game, then you've already broken out of a limitation that 90% of the population doesn't even know that they're stuck in. Because once you see that every area in your life is a game, you start to become conscious of it, and you start to understand how these different areas are giving you joy or creating pain for you. And from this place of awareness, you can begin to analyze your life in context and start to make changes towards aligning to a vision of an ideal person you want to be. And it's as simple as facing as the uncomfortable truths that you've been avoiding. It's actually that simple. But the simplest things are really the hardest things in life. So begin to face the uncomfortable truths, and your courage will begin to build. And the second thing is that you have to realize this interconnectedness between games, right? I'll give you a few examples. The family relationship game might stop you from playing the money game impeccably, because your family might have a lot of limiting money beliefs based on how you're raised, how you grew up, right? Think about it. That's like 18 years of programming of oh, we can't buy this because, oh, that's too expensive. You start to internalize it, right? The friend game might stop you from the purpose game, because your friends have limiting beliefs about career and what they can accomplish. You see all your friends around you, because they've internalized the beliefs from their families. That's how they were brought up, and that's how you were brought up too. Or you internalize the belief that, oh, the only way to make money, the only way to live life is to go to school, go to post-secondary, then find a job after you graduate, and that's the only way. And your friends, because their parents imposed that on them, then they start to impose it on you, and because your parents imposed it on you, then you start to impose it on your friends. But what if you could become conscious of that? Then you start realizing, do I really want to have this belief? Like, is this the path I really want to go down to if I was truly speaking to myself with truth? And the dating game might stop you from finding the partner of your dreams, because your vibration is being tied down by lower value mates. And perhaps you're also tying down your partner with your low vibrations. So you have to, within games, you have to realize the way that you're not playing the game right. And it's like, you have to beat the boss in order to move on to the next level, right? And so if you keep repeating the same patterns and each time you fail to beat the boss, then you're obviously doing something wrong. So if you change the way that you're going about the level, and you upgrade yourself, you do some side quests, you change the way you approach attacking the boss, then perhaps finally you'll break out of that vibration and move to a higher one and move to the next level, right? And so a lot of people, when they're dating, they're stuck, constantly moving from one partner to the next, but it's like the same pattern repeating over and over and over and over again. But then you have to look inside yourself, right? What patterns are you repeating that's keeping you there? Because that's the nature of similar vibrations attract. And the third thing is you can either level up or quit the game. And there's no shame in quitting. Just change the games that you're playing if leveling up is still not serving you, right? But you have to deeply understand the reasons for why you're quitting. Are you quitting out of inspiration or out of fear, right? This goes back to understanding how different areas in your life are either giving you joy or creating pain. You have to understand the reasons for why you're quitting. And you'll genuinely find that you should only quit something out of inspiration for something greater and not cower to quitting out of fear, right? So you have to become conscious in order to distinguish these things. And so be careful with this one, because fear often disguises itself as inspiration, right? But if moving on to a greater thing doesn't feel inspiring, doesn't feel like it enlarges you, it feels like you're getting smaller. It's a feeling. It feels like you're getting smaller by trying to leave something behind. Then take it as a sign, and that's fear and not inspiration. Fourth thing, level up your character so you can customize your character and upgrade your items. This goes back to the dating analogy I just gave, right? But you also have to realize that leveling up is not limited to only material things and experiences. But probably the most important thing about leveling up is based on how you conduct yourself. It's your demeanor, it's your attitude, it's your gaze, it's your attractiveness and your trait qualities. And as you level up in areas of your life, your character level is going to increase as well, right? You know, as you increase your level, you're going to have points you can spend. Spend your points on character traits that align with the ideal person you want to be. So for example, the ideal version of you is confident and has conviction, right? What does he walk like? Does he walk slouch over like this, or does he walk with a confident gait? How does he dress, right? Is his fashion stylish? Does he notice the small things in his fashion, like his sleeves? Does he roll that up, add an extra, layer of sophistication and attraction to it, right? Relationships. The ideal person listens. They have empathy. They have understanding for other people because they're not insecure about themselves. When you're not insecure about yourself, you don't get insecure and defensive when you hear about other people's faults, other people's lacks, other people's shortages, right? You develop a sense of empathy for them and you understand them because you were once there too. And you have to realize that this empathy and this ability to listen is based on the understanding that if you were in their situation with their mindset at the time, you would respond the exact same way as well. And so that's the core of empathy. And, character traits, say with money, right? Somebody who is high value, who is confident, who knows their value, starts to appreciate others too. And because you're in a state of abundance and you're not lacking, and because you have so much, you naturally just want to give, right? So in the case of money, this might be tipping more. This might be seeing the purchases that you make as self-investments rather than a waste of money, and choosing quality things over quantity of things. So maybe your taste for food changes. Before you used to buy fast food, but then now you realize wow, why would I want to treat myself like garbage like this? And you start buying the more whole foods, right? And you start being unafraid to, say, purchase online courses or whatever for your own self-education because you see that as a self-investment. It's not a waste of money, it's a self-investment. And when you invest yourself, it compounds because you become more able to create even more. And so even if you lose everything, the one thing you can't lose is your character. And once your character is established, then you can easily farm back any items that you lose. And so bonus tip, customize your controls. Your mouse sensitivity, your movement keybinds, your item keybinds, and create these shortcut buttons that serve to make aligning to your ideal life easy. right? So mental shortcuts might be having empowering thoughts and beliefs and assumptions about yourself and the world. Physical shortcuts, right? These are habits. Have a sleep routine that keeps you invigorated and alive each and every day. Have an exercise regimen that does the same thing. Nutrition. Eat in a way that fuels your body and makes you feel good because you respect yourself, right? The ideal version of you probably respects themselves, and that respect, a part of that respect is refusing to overindulge in foods that are no good. And so I'm going to end off with this. It's scary, but you have to learn to trust your own path. And in trusting your authentic self, you're going to inevitably find yourself building towards it. You will begin attracting your dream into your reality, and it will happen just as naturally as a river from the top of a mountain finds its way back into the ocean. Soon there will be no fundamental difference between dream and reality. No difference between the river and the ocean. In the end, they will always merge as one. This ending is only the beginning. You just need to unblock the dam. If you enjoyed this kind of discussion, drop a like, leave a comment, maybe something you found insightful about this video, something you're struggling on right now, some epiphany you've recently realized that has empowered you a lot. Consider subscribing. I would love to have you on my channel. And check me out on Twitter. I've been trying to post more ideas. And until next time, see you in the next one.